Hello all. We have heard about private parks, we have heard about private buses, we have heard about private houses and private hotels. But for the first time, the government of Madhya Pradesh has in fact proposed a new and unique idea, that is private forests. And what are the private forests? Usually forests are considered to be the property of entire humanity. And because they are considered as property of humanity, usually the government will be considered as a caretaker for the forest, and there is no absolute ownership over the land of the forest. But for the first time, the concept of privatization emerged in the management of the forest in Madhya Pradesh. In fact, the Madhya Pradesh government gave some draft policy on forest restoration using corporate social responsibility, corporate ecological responsibility and non-governmental funds. The policy's name is Policy for Forest Restoration Using Corporate Social Responsibility, Corporate Ecological Responsibility and Non-Governmental Funds. And under this policy, it has called for private participation in forest conservation. So why Madhya Pradesh government has given this call for? If you understand this, Madhya Pradesh is the state with the largest forest cover in India. In fact, Madhya Pradesh as a state has in total 9.5 million hectares of forest. And of these 9.5 million hectares, nearly 3.7 million hectares is degraded forest. This is the region of forest where the tree vegetation is very scarce, the forests are degraded and they are not serving the ecological function to their fullest capacity. Then it is called as degraded forest. And nearly 40% of the forests in Madhya Pradesh are degraded forests. That is 3.5 million hectares. And for restoration of a hectare of forest land to its full capacity, nearly 5 to 8 lakh rupees is required. And just to think about multiplying 5 lakhs into 3.5 million hectares of land, then automatically the number that comes out is a mind-boggling number, and the government doesn't have the necessary capacity to restore the forest to their full capacity. That is the reason why the Madhya Pradesh government has proposed the idea of private participation in forest management. So how will the private participate? What kind of benefits they will get? It has been clearly given down. Under the guidelines which have been given, a private entity can in fact adopt or take ownership of nearly 1,000 hectares of forest land. Not 1 or 2, but 1,000 hectares of forest land they can take ownership of. And the lease which is given to the private entity, it will be given for a period of nearly 60 years. 1,000 hectares maximum, 60 years is the maximum lease time, and in the 60 years, the private sector will work in order to develop plantations in the forest region. And these plantations should be at least they should maintain 75% survival of the plantation trees that are being planted. That should be the responsibility of the private sector. And if the private sector ensures this, what benefit the private sector is going to get? First and foremost, the private sector will get rights over minor forest produce. As of now, under the Right to Forest Act of 2005, the minor forest produce is the exclusive preserve of the tribal communities which are residing in the forest. But this draft policy, it proposes that of the minor forest produce which is produced from the degraded forest, nearly 50% should go to the private sector because they have invested in restoring the degraded forest. 30% should go to the Madhya Pradesh Forest Development Corporation and 20% should go to the local communities. So it means that under the Right to Forest Act, 100% of minor forest produce should be given to the tribal communities, but under the draft guidelines, only 20% would be given to the tribal entities and 50% will be given to the private entities. Then over and above that, the private sector also gets benefited because the forest that they have restored will add to their carbon credits. And right now we are moving towards a carbon credit mechanism, and carbon credit market is also being developed, because of which reason that will also be one of the benefit for the private sector. The forest would be restored on one side. On the other side, the private sector also can get some benefit from maintaining the forest is the idea of the Madhya Pradesh government. But this raises some very serious concerns about the legality of the issue. Primarily because in India, we have PISA, that is Panchayat Raj Extension to Scheduled Areas, which gives the control over forest to the tribal communities. Then over and above that, we have the Right to Forest Act, which gives the tribal communities who are residing in the forest joint forest management rights. And along with joint forest management rights, the tribal communities who are residing in the forest, they will also get the rights of minor forest produce. What will happen to the rights of these communities if the private sector takes ownership of the forest is something that needs to be clarified. Only after that these kind of steps need to be taken. And if we dedicate the forest to the private sector, they will try to commercialize the issue. But forests by their very nature are not meant for the use of commercial purpose. So that is the reason why the Madhya Pradesh government should rethink it, as many tribal communities have started or raised their concerns about this policy of the Madhya Pradesh Forest Department. As the Forest Department's policy is a draft policy, it is not implemented as of yet. Let us wait and see what is going to happen in future. All right, thank you.
కాంపిటేటివ్ ఎగ్జామ్ సంబంధించి ప్రత్యేకంగా సివిల్ సర్వీసెస్ ఎగ్జామ్ సంబంధించి ఏ ఆప్షన్ చూస్ చేసుకోవాలి, ప్రిపరేషన్ ఎప్పుడు స్టార్ట్ చేయాలి, ఏ బుక్స్ రిఫర్ చేయాలి, ఇలాంటి డౌట్స్ ఉంటే 𝐶SBIS అకాడమీని కాంటాక్ట్ అవ్వచ్చు. దీనికి సంబంధించి నా పర్సనల్ అపాయింట్మెంట్ ఈ వీడియో పైన డిస్ప్లే అవుతున్న కాంటాక్ట్ నెంబర్కి ఫోన్ చేసి తీసుకోవచ్చు.